Welcome back to the Mediocre Alaskan Podcast. Got a podcast that was a couple weeks in the making, I guess now. Harrison Gotchling, I was up there for the caribou hunt, and we were going to do a pike recap, ice fishing recap. But what happened? Why did we not do that?
Time just eluded us, I suppose. We were having too much fun doing other stuff.
Yeah.
Cutting up caribou and getting stuff packed and trying to hang out with other people while you were in town.
Steve Shannon's fault. That was the problem.
That's it.
That is that was the problem. Yeah. But hey, man, thanks for being back on here, even though it's not what we had hoped when it came to recording on the kitchen table again. But I guess based on the kitchen table's sound quality, it's much better to do it with my new equipment from afar.
Yeah, I think for the quality that we would have had to have done for the kitchen, we would have had a lot more intimate setup. We would have had to been really close to each other's faces. So.
Yeah, after going to Tyler's and seeing his setup, like, yeah, I know it's a free podcast, but gosh dang it, man, I got to step up the game. I felt pretty guilty, so.
Especially since he's calling you the OG and everything, you got to step up your game.
I know. It was like I was daring people to listen. Like, it's going to be terrible quality, and I don't really care. Like, well, dude, if I don't care, then why the heck would people listen? But anyway.
Yeah.
So. It was a good podcast, too. I thought we had some great stuff about the caribou. I'm not sure if it was well listened to. I think it was compelling, so some people did. The Spotify one was a lot better quality than the iTunes or the Apple podcast.
Yeah, I was actually really happy with that. I think that was probably my favorite podcast that I've ever done before. So,
yeah, you get better at it. It's fun. It's weird being a guest too. I think I've been a guest once maybe, and Tyler's was 3. That doesn't make any sense. I hadn't been a podcast until this last year, and it was only once, and then I've been on twice in the last couple months, and so it's kind of feeling like a different. It's just a different approach, different thing, but you get better at it. You don't have to.
Yeah, you were just on Tongass Talk. Is that what it was?
Yeah, I was just on Tongass Talk, and that'll be airing I think next week, and then I was on with the. Alaska Wild Project, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool. Those guys are down in Anchorage, and it was fun to talk to them. But again, it's different when you're kind of the host and you're guiding the discussion versus you just kind of sit there and wait to be asked. But
yeah, I only know about being a guest, so hopefully I never have to be the one to start asking questions.
You don't want to start your own podcast?
Hard pass.
Hard pass. Well, you like being on them, though. It's fun to talk.
Yeah. It's mostly just like having a phone conversation that is maybe a little bit more pointed.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, it's pretty natural.
Yeah. So I do want to talk about the ice fishing a little bit. We had talked before on a podcast in December or January, just kind of what the program is. And it was cool to see it and experience it. Some things that stuck out to me. One was just how frozen the water was. Like, it's obvious that if you're ice fishing, the water is going to be frozen, but there was we were down in this river, and clearly when it had started to freeze, it was up near a bank, and then we were a couple feet lower into it, and then there was about 4 feet of ice. And so it seemed to me like there was maybe a 8 to 10 foot difference between what the water flow would have been when it's flowing versus what it was when it's frozen. Is that did I make any sense there? Is that about right?
Yeah. It always seems that in the spring, of course, whenever it melts, that's when the rivers get really high, and towards as it cools down throughout the summer and the winter, or rather through the fall, it starts to drop a little more, and then when it creates that first shelf of ice, it always seems that it kind of condenses and the water flow keeps going even less in some rivers. And so that's why there was like a big shelf of ice way up high on the bank, and then where we actually were was several feet below that.
And then it seemed like there wasn't a whole lot of, I mean, it makes absolute sense because you're not getting a whole lot of runoff or anything. There's no snow melt or anything like that happening. And so it seemed like there was a little bit of water at the bottom, but not much. There were a couple of times when I went over there to get the tip up, and like kind of set the hook, and I set the hook into the bottom of the ice, and that was without really pulling on it at all. And so the fish couldn't have had more than maybe 2 feet of water at that point, it seemed like. Is that
So
about kind of what you think?
my suspicion is that we were fishing where the auger punched through to get water coming up through the hole, and then there was only a couple feet below that. I think we were fishing in a subshelf of ice, so that there was another layer of ice underneath the bottom of the thickest part of the ice, if that makes sense. So there was, there's like the 4 feet of ice, and then the 2 or 3 feet of water, and then another small sheet of ice probably, and then more than likely there was about another 10 to 15 feet of water below that.
So that's a really stinking deep river then.
It's fairly deep, yeah.
Like from the bank down, you subtract the feet of open air because everything was lower, and then you subtract the ice, and then wow, that's. But it makes sense though. Like it wasn't a wide braided river like you see. It was kind of just a flat land snaking through pretty deep, and it had really cut in. And there, I looked on the maps, and there were a couple. It looked like where it had snaked had been cut off at some point, and so it just ended up being this empty or this slough that didn't connect to the river anymore. How much do you see these rivers kind of change their course? Obviously, the Chena is not going to do a whole lot. The Tanana is not going to do a whole lot too because it's kind of hemmed in. But or maybe they do. Like, how much do you see rivers change their course?
Oh, they definitely do. I mean, that's the life of a river, is that it ebbs and flows as they snake throughout the decades. They will kind of start to have such a sharp turn that it'll erode the bank until it eventually erodes the bank all the way through, and it creates a whole nother channel. So, I mean, if you were to like go on Google Earth and look at the upper Chena River, then, you'd see remnants of the old river where it looked as though it had been bended through and channels had been cut off or extra sloughs were made or whatever. It's the same thing with, the braided rivers like the Tanana, especially once you start getting into the headwaters and stuff like that of silty braided rivers. That happens very often and changes from year to year.
Yeah. And then if you start getting close to town, or if there's a highway nearby that runs parallel to it, like that's going to prevent some sort of change. But yeah, it was kind of interesting. A lot of the rivers down here are just so small and they drain so quick. You don't have, like, you'll have little bits of some change on the Thorn River over on Prince of Wales, which is the longest river on the island. You'll get a lot more of that. And so down closer to the mouth, there are a couple bends that have eroded, and cut into the bank, and then a lot of the sediment and a lot of the rocks have dumped in and kind of changed it a little bit. But outside of that, for the most part, it just stays pretty consistent. So those bigger interior rivers, it's pretty cool to see, and then see it from the air too. It's hard to get a grasp of what you're looking at when you're looking at it at eye level. When you're up on top, it's just like a maze, and it's beautiful. But how do you navigate that when you were looking at, obviously, the river that we were on? Like, you couldn't lose the river, you were on it. But some of that braided stuff, when you're going in a new season, if it had been high water, like, how do you decide which braid to go up? Does it stay somewhat consistent? What are you looking for as far as, like, there could be new debris in the water, some shallow stuff? How do you navigate the new water?
That's a good question. And, a lot of times you just have to learn how to read water and, see ripples, or to determine whether or not there's something under there or how shallow it may be. I don't have a whole lot of experience in really silty rivers, so I don't have so much to say about those. But as far as, regular rivers, like in here around town, there's the Salter River, it definitely gets really shallow in some spots. And so being able to read water really is able to help you out. And I would imagine that it's pretty transferable to silty rivers as well. But I would just think that you have to look for the biggest channels and what looks like the most amount of water going through it. And if it's just like a little offshoot, then probably be best to stay away from there. And because a lot of those silty rivers, if you get stuck and you're hauling ass, or you have a real heavy load and you get stuck, then you're going to have a really unpleasant time trying to get unstuck, especially if there's not a sandbar that you can place your stuff on in the boat to set it on dry. And it's just not going to be very fun for you.
Makes sense.
I'm not very adventurous in boats, honestly.
Well, it's a different program, especially something if it changes that much, you can't really get a solid routine necessarily because like you figure out the river, but if the river changes, then you're could be in trouble. As far as scouting spots, because you can't read a river if it's frozen. So when you are ice fishing on a river rather than a lake, like how do you choose the spots? Is it mostly kind of stuff that you know from just talking to people that are good spots, or do you scout stuff when the water's running so you know it's going to be deep enough to have fish hold over? Like, what are you looking for? How do you scout ice fishing spots on rivers?
So the a really good resource is Alaska Department of Fish and Game's website. They have so many online resources available for rivers and lakes and for different species of fish, and they'll give like breakdowns for what this species of fish will be like in the summer versus the winter, what you're looking for the kinds of bends in the river that would probably be best for them in the different seasons. And especially with lakes, they have these really awesome topographic maps that show that the deepness of them and where shelves are. And so, if you read something about lake trout and where it's like, oh, they like to be on slopes or where land drops off, then, you could look at those resources, kind of plan it like that and head out that way and try and figure it out. But what I found is that with ice fishing, you just keep punching holes until you find fish.
Mm-hmm. What about in lakes? How does that vary from lake program?
It's the same thing for me. I've become pretty impatient for ice fishing in like lakes like Quartz Lake or whatever. In the wintertime, it's, if I punch a hole and punch a couple holes and put a couple rods down, if I don't get action in 10 minutes, I'm moving, whether it's, 50 yards or 150 yards or even like a half mile. Like I'll just keep moving until I find the fish, because especially in lakes, you never really know exactly where they are until you find them.
Yeah. We use tip ups, and you did do some jigging with a little piece of tree that you'd cut down. What's your preferred method?
After years of fine print contracts and getting ripped off by big wireless providers, if we've learned anything, it's that there's always a catch. So when I first heard that Mint Mobile offers premium wireless starting at just $15 a month, I thought, what's the catch? But after talking to them and using their service, it all made sense. There isn't one. Mint Mobile's secret sauce is that they're the first company to sell wireless service online only. They cut out the cost of retail stores and pass those sweet savings directly to you. For anyone who hates their phone bill, Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for just $15 a month. I was hesitant about having to get a new phone and a new phone number, but with Mint, you can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and keep your same phone and your same phone number along with all of your existing contacts. Mint Mobile gives you the best rate whether you're buying for one or for a family, and at Mint, families start at 2 lines. All plans come with unlimited talk and text plus high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Switch to Mint Mobile and get premium wireless service starting at just $15 a month. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month and to get the plan shipped to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/waypoint. That is mintmobile.com/waypoint. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/waypoint.
I personally like jigging just to make it feel like I'm doing something.
Yeah.
Even if it's, less hooks. It's just funner. You get to really feel the fish bite and entice them, and you just hone in on exactly what you're doing, and that to me is more exciting than running around checking flag ups and stuff. And while it is fun to do tip ups, it's also fun just to sit there and jig.
That was pretty fun to just kind of looking left, right, looking, and then you kind of hear the spring engage, and then you see the flag go up, and you kind of run over there and you see what you got there. It's pretty fun. I could see how the novelty might wear off, and after a little bit, you're like, okay, I want to active fish, especially if there's a lot of fish around. You want to set the hook and feel the fight and bring it up. But yeah, it was definitely a cool experience for sure.
Yeah, the tip ups are a pretty unique way to fish, I think. And they have other ones too where you can set a rod in like a little metal coil, and then you bend the rod tip down to like a little pressure thing. And if a fish were to bite the hook, it'll release the pressure on the tip of the pole and snap it up. So pretty much like setting the hook.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with a tip up, there's really no resistance on their ability to get the bait on the tip up. So they just kind of can take it, put it in their mouth. And if they just move it a little bit, generally the flag will go up. So, I mean, you could get a lot of false flags, I think, with tip ups. But I've never tried those other ones that I just mentioned. But they seem pretty popular down in the States.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. I can picture lakes in Minnesota just being packed with them. So when does that season end? Like, when are you looking at the ice becoming a little bit unsafe and looking more forward to breakup, things like that?
In a couple of weeks here. I think the middle of April is, you're pushing your luck, especially, if you're riding on it, you're starting to see overflow or open water and stuff like that. It's stuff to really be wary about, because last thing you want to do is ice up your snow machine. You can't get back because, where we were, it was 35 miles one way. So
yeah, that was a fun ride. It was a fun trip, but it does seem like at some point when it does turn, it's got to turn quick, because you go from -30, which is what it was when we were caribou hunting, to all of a sudden you're looking at the breakup. What's that in Nanana, the breakup,
the Nanana Ice Classic.
The Ice Classic, yeah. That's my parents used to, or my dad would always bet on my birthday and my brother's birthday, and his birthday is April 25th. My birthday was May 2nd. That seems to be kind of in the realm of possibility of when it would happen. So you go from -30 to iced out, or making its way out by May. That's a month and a half. That's pretty quick. It's a lot of ice to move out.
It really is. And, that's where the land of the midnight sun really comes in, because right now, as we said, April 1st, we have more sunlight than we do not. We have over 12 hours of sunlight now. We're not necessarily sunlight, but from sunrise to sunset, it's longer than 12 hours. So, and it just keeps tacking on 6 minutes a day.
Yeah.
So it just keeps going and going, a week, and you're just about an hour more of daylight every day. So
how messy is that breakup? It's just got to be just a wet, sloshy, just mess, I guess, is no better word, because you had all that snow accumulate. None of it's rained off. None of it's melted off. It is pretty dry, and so it's not quite as high as maybe some other areas. But, what is that like, and how long does it last when it's all just starting to melt, turn to water?
About a month from the time where it starts to really be starting to get a little slushy to the time where it really all goes away is probably a good solid month. But that's what rubber boots are for. I mean, our road is a dirt road, and if we don't get the snowpack removed, or if we're lazy and don't snow blow a lot, then our driveway just becomes a hot mess, and it's awful. And then, excuse me, in some areas of my yard, I have to get a sump pump and run it for like a week straight, just to get pools of water out and away from low spots.
Wow. So I hear the kids in the background. Kind of change of topics here. I saw that you had Revan running around in the snow machine, and then he's playing hockey as well. What is it like raising a kid in an area that might be somewhat miserable? I guess he doesn't know any different, but as an adult, you can kind of see the good of living in an area like that. But what is it like raising a kid and convincing him to do these cool outdoor type things? But that first trip is so important. If he goes out there and he's cold and he hates it, man, he might start hating Fairbanks. So how do you judge getting kids involved in the outdoors in such extreme climate?
It's just baby steps, really, that I found. He's about to turn 6, and then maybe next winter I'll take him out with me to go fishing where we did. But that's like an all day thing. And by then I'll have a big ice fishing shack where I can take it out there and put a propane heater in there, and, he can go in there and get warm and whatever, and make cocoa and that kind of stuff. But it's all really about having fun, whether it's the outdoors or stuff like hockey at an age like 4, 5, 6 years old. It's all about just making it short, sweet, and fun. If they're not fun, then they're not having it. They couldn't care less if they had a really nice, brand new, fancy, really expensive bike or something, or if it's a little cheap, dinky bike. As long as they're having fun, like it doesn't really matter what they're doing. We've bought lots of toys for our kids, and when they're outside, especially in the summertime, like they'll hit sticks with other sticks and have as much fun as anything.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed is that, if your kids see you enjoying something, they're going to want to try it, and they're going to want to be like you. And that's what I've noticed a lot with my son is he sees the things that I'm into and the stuff that I do, like riding snow machines or hunting or fishing, and that's what he wants to do. And just because he's not doing it all day or whatever, that's what is up his alley. We'll go out and go for quote unquote hunting for moose or something, and really we're just in like the woods behind my house, and it's like the middle of July, not even moose season. I put him in like a little orange hat and let him carry around his BB gun, and we listen and look for stuff and just have fun.
Yeah, I think there's such a valuable element in that, because it's something that's not a screen and it's real, and it's just that curiosity that you get. It's just impossible to turn off. When you're a kid, you have to actively turn off that curiosity. At some point you become less curious about things, and at some point you might just say that you're bored. But just building that tolerance, or building that ability to self-soothe, self-manage, and be self-sufficient when it comes to that, and just going for a walk and being happy with just going for a walk. Or my buddies and I in high school just going out to the woods, just mess around, chop down some trees, build a little cabin, or put an old seine net in some trees. And you're doing that in high school because it's just what we did. The weather wasn't always great, so we spent some time inside playing Nintendo. But that's just so valuable and so rich. And then being able to, as a dad, provide that for your kids, that's got to feel pretty cool that you're not in one of those areas that doesn't have that, and it's like some fictional story. Yeah, fathers and sons and fathers and daughters used to go outside and they would pick berries, or they would go hunting, and you read about it in a book, as opposed to taking Revan out, putting that orange hat on, and walk around looking for moose. Like, that's just such a piece that's missing from society, and I wonder just how bad some things are because that is missing.
Yeah, that's a really hard thing to quantify, I suppose. But living in a place where I do in interior Alaska here, it's a really unique area that is unlike a lot of places in the world. And, the things that we are able to do to be able to live off the land in such a way. I'm not a big gardener, but, to go out and pick berries or harvest animals and stuff like that, it's, it's a very large part of our life in the summer and fall, and even in the winter. And so just making them get out there, and even though they're like, oh, I'm tired, my legs are tired, I don't want to walk anymore, it's like you can do it just a little farther and you'll be okay. And just having things for them to do while they're out there to have them have fun. I'm not saying like bring iPads or nothing like that, because we don't really do that unless it's like a plane ride or where it makes it unbearable. But for actually like being outside, like they'll find something, give them a extremely dull knife and let them have fun.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's something really important about testing those limits. When you think you're tired, you're bored, but no, you can go further. I think that you can build a lot of confidence that way, and confidence in yourself and your ability to, physically exert yourself and then know that you have more. I think that's just such an important thing. And, I just, the worst case scenario is just this idea that we can solve a lot of those things with virtual reality, and just like pretend that it's actually happening, and trick the brain into thinking that it's happy and that you're actually doing things when it's not. That just terrifies me going forward, that we're going to have to fake it. And it's, oh man, that's a whole nother thing there.
Yeah. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't scared for what the future will bring for my kids when they're my age or even older. But, I think that is probably one of the constants throughout history, is the older generation feels like the youth is lost, or something bad's going to happen to them, or they're going to ruin the world or whatever. They'll figure it out. It may be a little different than what we see now, but we're still human. We're still going to have to eat, and they'll figure it out. But I'm just trying to give them the tools to find the enjoyment in the outdoors and, not shove it down their throats. Like if they didn't like it, I wouldn't, push it on them. Not that I'm pushing it on them now, but that's what they want to do. They want to go outside. They want to ride the snow machine. They want to do what me and my wife do. So it's comes easy that way.
That's huge. That's great. Well, that's a pretty good closer, man. You got anything else to tie this thing up? I really appreciate you inviting me up there, and the hospitality and the caribou program was great. And then we got the pike, man. Just a great short trip, man.
It was, yeah. I'm excited for you to come up again. We'll do it again. We'll go shoot something else. We'll go catch something else. And go check out another piece of interior Alaska.
That sounds good, man. And I'm gonna take you up on that. So we'll have to talk about the next quarry. Moose, another caribou, Dall sheep, all that stuff. We gotta make happen.
Absolutely.
Cool. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you.